Okay, comma rules. We're going to be looking at two types of clauses, one in which uses commas, which is called the unrestrictive clause. We can also call this the you don't need it clause. We're also going to be looking at a clause called a restrictive clause. In this case, we will not use commas. You as a writer, you as a reader, it's important to distinguish between the two. We can call the restrictive clause the you need it clause. So first, notice these rules, non-restrictive clauses and restrictive clauses, will always apply to either adjective clauses or participial phrases. My examples will deal with adjective clauses. So, unrestrictive clauses. First, these will use commas. So let's look at this sentence. The school's baseball team, which included Justin, Trevor, and Danny, really improved last year. The clause in red is an adjective clause. In this case, it modifies the noun school's baseball team. This is the unrestrictive clause of the sentence. Now let's see what happens when we take out the unrestrictive clause, also the adjective clause, in this case. We are left with a sentence. The school's baseball team really improved last year. It's a great sentence, it's correct, and there's nothing wrong with it. But when we go back and we add that unrestrictive adjective clause, which remember is which included Justin, Trevor, and Danny, we end up being left with a more complete sentence that adds a little bit of extra detail. It tells us about this school's baseball team. It tells us the members of the team. It tells us how Justin, Trevor, and Danny, who were a part of that team, helped it to improve last year. So the unrestrictive clause, overall, you don't always need it in a sentence, but it's good information to know. It can often add more clarity and relevance to a sentence. Now, restrictive clauses. This is a clause that will not use a comma. So first, let's look at this sentence. Leonardo DiCaprio's movie, The Departed, won the Oscar for the Best Picture. Now, technically, this is an incorrect sentence. So, in this case, let's see what would happen if we were to take out the adjective clause, The Departed. We would be left with this sentence. Leonardo DiCaprio's movie won the Oscar for Best Picture. You have to ask yourself, does this sentence really make sense? And the answer is technically no. The reason being, we don't know which Leonardo DiCaprio movie won the Oscar for Best Picture. Leo's made a lot of movies, right? Like, was it Gangs of New York, Catch Me If You Can, The Aviator, or something else? We don't know which one it was that won the Oscar. Before we go any further, Catch Me If You Can, of course, Leonardo DiCaprio's greatest movie. Should have won the Oscar for Best Picture in 2002. I'm not sure which movie did, but that one didn't. But, back to restrictive clauses. So the way we would write this sentence correctly, Leonardo DiCaprio's movie, The Departed, won the Oscar for Best Picture. This is the correct way of writing this sentence, and it does not use commas. The reason we have to have the adjective clause, The Departed, in this case, which modifies movie, is we have to know which Leonardo DiCaprio movie won the Oscar. It is essential to know that it was The Departed and not Gangs of New York or Catch Me If You Can that won the Oscar. In this case, the adjective clause is essential to a further, more complete understanding of the sentence. So restrictive clauses, we can say, if it's something your audience has to know, don't use a comma in your adjective clause to separate it from the rest of the sentence. Also, don't use a comma if it were to deal with a participial phrase. It's essential to an understanding of the sentence. So comma rules. Unrestrictive clauses, remember, will use commas. It's the you don't need it clause, but it helps. More often than not, it can provide more information to the reader. We also have the restrictive clause. This will not use a comma. We can call this the "you need it" clause, or else we're confused. We have to know the information to understand the sentence.